Gentlemen, welcome to the Week 11 wrap-up here at our 15th season of Blood, Sweat, and Beers, coming to you in a much more familiar format. We've hit that point in the season where you either have confidence in your team and your roster, or you still have no idea who's going to show up any given week. I know that's how I feel. I know how that's just in some of the discussions, how some of you feel. I don't think that's how Bloop feels. I feel like he just is already dusting off the place on his mantle for his next trophy. But how confident are you in your team? You know, we still make some changes, some adjustments, hit the waiver wire as teams, as injuries continue to happen and teams make some roster adjustments. Aaron, for instance, has just lost, I guess, another running back. Henderson was dropped by the Rams. But how confident are you? Well, it's an interesting question, because as we look at the end of this at our standings and our playoff projections, there's a very interesting line drawn between what Watson says are very confident teams to make the playoffs and pretty much everybody else. So kind of curious how you individually feel about your roster and your chances, not just to make the playoffs, but to actually make it past that first or even second round, see if you can make it to the championship. Let's take a look at the scores from this past week. It was an interesting week. I guess they're all interesting, especially late in the season. Not a lot of adjustments to playoff seedings. No one else locked in their playoff spot. No one was technically eliminated just yet, although about as close as it could be without actually being eliminated. But we take a look at that first score. As we have our list here off to the side, we have Kamish holding out against Jersey Birds. Kamish came back and actually had a decent showing, 140 plus points. Put that as the mark. And while it was possible for Jersey Birds to overcome that with Pacheco and Brown on Monday night, it would have amounted to essentially a Monday Night Miracle to take that on. So Jersey Birds faltering a little bit, flopping in the wind, but not really soaring much towards the end of this season, and his playoff hopes are definitely on the bubble. Somebody's going to get that sixth spot, so we'll take a look and see what happens there. Our next game, Aaron and Pet Detectives. Joey just continues to struggle. His team just having a hard time showing up. The names look good, the numbers don't. So that's just unfortunate how it is. But Aaron maintains his number 2 spot in the West, and on the verge of locking in his own playoff spot. So while not a fantastic showing, Mixon and the usual Tyreek Hill were enough to get him past our current last place team at Detectives. As we look at Poncho taking care of business, we mentioned it over the weekend. That game was never close. Poncho showed up for his second 180-point performance, and I guess his last one was about 4 or 5 weeks ago. Coming on strong at the end of the season. I don't think that we'll look at the playoff projections, but I don't think that our Drunken Samurai is. I don't think that analogy is going to work so well for this particular season. We'll see what happens over the next 3 weeks. Still has a shot to make the playoffs, but Poncho making a strong case for number 1 in the East and a first round bye. We'll see how that works out. We don't want to forget the fact that twice he's been under 100 points, although that was much earlier in the season. And just over the past 5 weeks, he's now hit 180 twice, although came up just short of 110 in between those. So definitely a roller coaster with Poncho, but we'll see how those last 3 weeks go. And by virtue of puzzles outlasting Don Chris. They're both still tied in record, but Poncho owns the tiebreak. So technically, if the season ended after this past weekend, he would have had that number 1 spot in the East and the bye week. So we'll see if he can hold on to that. Speaking of the number 1 and the bye week, Gloop, while not greedy this week, just short of 130 points, pretty average so far. It was definitely enough for the meager showing by Alex Billy. That was kind of an unfortunate thing. Alex Billy had 6 players under 10 points. You know, what are you going to do at that point? You got to have a couple of monster games. Saquon and Kyler were half of his score, and so didn't put up much of a fight. All Gloop had to do was more or less show up. And he maintains his 2-game lead in the East and his 2-game lead for that number 1 seed. He's already locked into the playoffs. With a win this week, Gloop ends up winning the West, because even no matter what Aaron does at that point, Hoffman's beaten him twice. So that's what he's looking forward to. We'll look at the schedule for coming, or the standings and the schedule coming up. That last game, like I said, Puzzles outlasted Don Chris. LRC just kind of had to put together a mediocre game. By the end of Sunday, Puzzles had come up short of 120, 118.9. Not a difficult target to meet, and yet 1 yard, that 1 yard from Devontae Smith, which would have given him the touchdown, would have put him at 100 points with the bonus. That would have meant the difference right there. But instead, Light Rail Coyote falls again, drops to 5-6, now fighting for his playoff spot, and gives Puzzles an opportunity to continue to try to take that number 1 spot in the East. We'll see how well that goes. We take a quick look at our standings after week 11. No real surprise in the West. It just continues to stretch with Gloop riding the top there. Although with just 2 games to go, if he falters, if he happens to lose out, and he's got a fairly strong, high strength of schedule going to the rest of the season, well, the door is open for Aaron, but most likely Gloop ends up taking the West and the number 1 seed there, gets the bye week. But as we look at this schedule, what we want to notice is that we have 3 7-4 teams. Now, Aaron and Poncho are playing each other, so only one of them can win. And whoever wins in that game locks in their playoff spot. Also, if Puzzles happens to win his game as the other 7-4 team, he'll lock in his spot. Because as you notice here, you're either in the 90% probability or you're less than 50% likely to make it. Now, there are 5 teams, 90% or better. So that means there is still a 6th spot. There is still a spot open. Light Rail Coyote currently has the best probability to make it, but not even Joey is completely out of the playoff picture. So, as always, win out, and you're going to likely make the playoffs. Some teams will need a little more help than others, but we'll see how that goes. So really the games to watch, the games that'll be the most interesting, Aaron versus Poncho. We'll see which one of them stamps their ticket to the playoffs, and a battle of the Miley boys. What will happen? Will one soar? Will one falter? Will it swing to the younger and he stamp his ticket? Or will Ian continue to torment his brother like I know he's done all of his life and make him wait at least 1 more week? We'll have to see. Enjoy week 12.